talk don't bother me.
And welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DeRienzo.
And I'm Miss Joan Moossy.
And we have playwright Juan Valenzuela here to talk about one of his own work as well, but also one of the most interesting Latino artists, poets in New York City, and a real hero of the Latin community and all people in New York City, Pedro Pietri, and also a resident of the Lower East Side, and one of the founders of Nuyorican Poetry Cafe on East 3rd Street, and Lower East Side all the way. You know, we have a big Lower East Side audience, so we're looking forward to talking about the show. And if you notice, behind us is 8th Street between Avenue B and Avenue C in about 1986, 1987. All those buildings are long gone, and there's a modern home for the elderly there.
This is Lost New York.
Right, this is Lost New York, what we're looking at. And we're going to talk a little bit about the days when there were buildings like that still standing on the Lower East Side. And by the way, all those buildings there, at the time those pictures had squatters living in them. Every one of them.
That's correct.
Every
yes.
single one of them that you see behind us right now. So Juan Valenzuela, tell us, well, here are you guys. What year is this picture taken?
That picture was taken in 1975 and 1976 at Photo Gallery in Broome Street in Soho. And
tell us who everybody is.
Go
on.
Okay.
From this side here.
You know, the first person in there, I don't know who that is. But the second one is Papoleto Melendez. Next is Willie Pietri, the Count. We call him the Count, Pedro's brother, who died tragically in the early 80s in a car accident. And then it's Pedro Pietri and myself. That's me.
Look at that facial hair.
Yes, that's me. This is basically a group called, well, we were the Latin Insomniacs motorcycle club without motorcycles. You know, we were a gang then, and somebody asked us for our motorcycle. We had a picture of a motorcycle in our wallet. So we will get it out and
show it.
Show it. And those are the basically the four members. You know, Pedro was the spiritual leader. I was the artistic director. You know, and many of the things that we did, we would, well, I would stage them, you know, like I stage some of his plays. You show the picture of 8th Street between Avenue B and C.
Yes.
The original Nuyorican Poets Cafe was in an all-Irish bar on 6th Street.
Oh, really?
Between A and B. And before they got...
the place on 3rd.
The place on 3rd,
yeah.
Huge building, beautiful building. That was
now tell
totally
us how you
transformed.
became associated with Pedro Pietri. And
I was in San Francisco in 1974. That was my last year in San Francisco. I arrived there in the 60s. I dropped out.
yes.
I came
Summer of Love?
a little bit after. A little bit after. When I came to the United States, I came to study theater. I went to Dallas Theater Center. And what happened there was that I got acquainted with Timothy Leary, Jerry Rubin, Abby Hoffman, and their ideas and their, you know, the dictum of, you know, drop out,
turn on,
drop out. I did. So,
but don't forget the theatrics in your politics.
Right. So I went to San Francisco, and in 1974, by that time I was a member of a community of artists in the Mission District, poets, writers, painters, so on and so forth.
The Mission neighborhood.
The Mission neighborhood.
In San Francisco.
Right. And we decided to have a meeting of the minds, East meets West, as far as, you know, Hispanic artists.
Sure.
So 3 people came from New York. One was Miguel Piñero, playwright, poet-playwright. He wrote Short Eyes to acclaim and big success. Miguel Algarin, the founder of the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, and Pedro Pietri. And that's how we met, you know. And on that year, I was getting real tired of San Francisco, you know, because there was not the theater activity that I was at that time longing for. And at the time, the love of my life.
That defines New York City.
Yes, she was a New Yorker, and well, let's go to New York. And I came to New York, and the first thing I did when I arrived was to let me see my friends, you know, where they are.
Check these guys out.
And I did get a job right away. Miguel Agarin gave me a job to build the stage for another of Piñero's plays. But what happened is that Pedro and I became really good friends, and it wasn't much that we liked each other. We liked our work.
Sure.
I liked his work. You know, he liked my work.
Right.
And that's how we, actually, he asked me, do you want to join the Latin Insomniacs?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well,
Sounds
definitely, sounds good to me. Let me do it. And that's how we became friends, collaborators.
When you came to New York, where was the first place you lived?
Oh my goodness, you won't believe it. 74th Street between 2nd and 1st Avenue.
All right, Upper East Side.
And I was scared shitless. Because, well, in those days you heard these awful stories about New York, you know.
Sure.
So it was like, I didn't go out for the first 2 or 3 months, you know, of the apartment. I mean, and I'm in the Upper
Found
East
about
Side.
delivery, right?
And I'm in the Upper East Side of all places.
In between the two ground zeros, you know, Alphabet
Yes.
City and then East Harlem.
Right. Well, in those days, you didn't cross First Avenue on Alpha. You know, if you were downtown,
Sure.
I mean, it was like a barrier.
That's right, it was. You're
You
absolutely
took your
right.
life in your hands.
You went east of First
If you
Avenue.
went,
Well, the taxis wouldn't take you. They
They
would drop
wouldn't.
you on First Avenue, and you would walk the rest of the way if you were going to
Right.
Avenue B or something.
That is right. I had Pedro asked me, the first thing I did with him, he was to have a reading of one of his plays for your pap at the Public Theater. And there was this crazy woman that was the director of the reading. But she was just like, she was not rehearsing, not even one rehearsal. What she was interested in was in inviting people here, inviting people there. And Pedro was crazy. I said, Juan, I mean,
What about the work?
I mean, what about the work? I mean, this bitch is not doing anything but just invite people,
Right.
you know. And he fired her, you know, and he said, please come and help me, you know. And so I got some, you know, he got all the actors,
Yeah.
most of them Puerto Rican actors, and I directed the reading for Joe Papp. He didn't buy it, you know. He didn't buy the play. No, Joe Papp had his, you know, Joe Papp had his. At the time, he had his. What should I call his quota? Because that's how.
That was his favorite.
Not, you see, on those days, Pop was an incredibly politician, very good, and he would fill up his, you know, Hispanics, blacks, and then the money would come in for his serious endeavors, you know. So, that's at least the way I felt at the time,
yeah.
you know, and. Which wasn't good because a lot of other playwrights like Pedro, like myself, had no chance.
Right, you couldn't get
at
in. Yeah.
all. And
What was the, was it different? I mean, I remember New York then for folks who don't know.
Yeah.
What was it like to be a Latino, especially Puerto Ricano or from any Latin country in New York in the
Of course, you're
early
Mexican,
1970s,
right?
You know,
yes.
talking about the early
Well,
1970s.
it was worse being Mexican
Yeah.
because there were no Mexicans around here,
Right.
and there were basically the two Hispanic theater controlled by Puerto Ricans, Intar controlled by Cubans. So I was a Mexican. Where do I fit in? And let me tell you, when I arrived to 74th Street, the Manhattan Theater Club was then on 73rd Street.
Oh, so right
Just
close.
in the back
Yeah.
of my apartment. $150 a month, a nice little studio apartment in the Upper East Side. Can you beat that?
New York used to treat artists well.
Right.
So I bring my play, called, which I did in San Francisco, called The Pink Error, or A Night of Total Theater.
Right.
And this is inspired by Rubin, by Hoffman, and all that street theater.
Yippies.
Yeah. Isn't that incredible that I
Yeah, you came full
came
circle.
to
Yeah.
We
full
met you
circle
at the Yippie Cafe.
at the Yippie Cafe, right?
Where you
So-
used to run the place
Yes,
for a while.
and what happened then was that this place was about images. There was dialogue, but used only as not as a plot, just as part of certain image. So I go to the Manhattan Theater Club, and I talk to someone in there, and they direct me to talk to, and I bring a play. So I bring my play, show it to him. 10 days later, I come back, since they didn't call me, and I come back and I said, what happened? And the man was very gracious, very nice, and he says, look, I don't think we can do this play in here. And which would have been good enough for me if he cuts it right there and says,
Right.
thank you very much,
And that's
here is your
it.
play.
Right.
But he went further, and he said, listen, you could go to the Puerto Rican Traveling Theater or Intar. And the reason he said that was because my name was
It's
Hispanic.
Hispanic, right.
And I felt like telling him, fuck you.
Right.
I mean, really.
They won't have me either.
I mean, in San Francisco, I had problems also in those days, because one time, by a good little friend of mine, I was introduced to somebody else as a minority playwright.
Oh, dear.
And I turned around and I almost slapped him, and I said, I'm a playwright, you fool.
Right,
I mean,
that's
what do you mean a
enough, right.
minority playwright?
Right,
I mean,
adjective.
yeah,
That's
I
the-
mean, it
that's
just didn't make sense to me,
Right.
at the time. So anyway, those were different times.
The times,
Those
right.
were different
Let's
times.
talk, because one of the things that happened, of course, was the church, the Methodist church, that was seized on Lexington Avenue. And that's where, I guess, Pedro Pietri became famous because he read his poem there in the church. Were you there, or were you aware of
No,
that?
I was very much aware, because Pedro is considered the poet laureate of the Young Lords.
What were the Young Lords? Just so folks don't know.
I wasn't here, but what I understand about the Young Lords is that they were a group that were putting a lot of pressure in the city, and the government, with demonstrations, and some of them were, I would say violent. They were building fires in the streets, and the church was the center. That's where, from
Everything
there,
was coming from.
everything was coming.
Sure.
And at the time, Pedro wrote the Puerto Rican obituary. As you can see, and I have it right here, as you can see, he is not saying the Nuyorican obituary. It's the Puerto Rican obituary, because then the term Nuyorican did not exist.
And he was born in
Puerto Rico,
Puerto Rico, right?
Puerto Rico, yeah.
Yeah.
He was 6 years old when he came to
United States.
the United States, and this book, the Nuyorican, it was coined, the term, I believe, maybe around 74, 75, and then it became the, Miguel with the
Right.
Nuyorican Poets Cafe,
Right.
Sure.
and it
Took off.
and it took off. Pedro and Papoleto were not part of the Nuyorican. In fact, there was a little bit of a
Some tension there.
tensions in
Between
there.
born in the United States and born
No, well, in a way, there was on Avenue B, around the corner, there was the Nuyorican village. Eddie was at the head of it. He's deceased also. And it was, the Nuyoricans were getting all the funding, all the money, everything was in there. Eddie was getting some things he was involved with the young lords, but he was a bad manager. Although I can tell you that a lot of the musicians that later on became stars in the salsa world, jazz, Latin jazz and all that,
Sure.
many of them used to play there, and actually they came to jam in there.
Where
at the Nuyorican village.
The Nuyorican village.
And
right.
you know what became after Eddie lost the place?
What?
The pyramid.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's the history of the pyramid.
I was before
That's
the
very
Yeah.
interesting.
yes,
All right.
that's before the pyramid. And Pedro, Papoletto, Willie, and myself, the Latin Insomniacs, we would not call ourselves Nuyorican. Well, I couldn't. We wouldn't call ourselves Nuyoricans. We were the Latin Insomniacs at the time, creating havoc most of the time. We were drunk most of the time. We used to go from the Nuyorican village to the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, back and forth, back and forth, until finally I remember Miguel Algarin gave us $300 for production of one of Pedro's plays called Jesus is Living. And I directed a play, and I was in it too. And as all the things that I have done in my life was an artistic success, but a financial flop. I mean,
That's theater for you, right?
oh, those days,
It seemed to be
yeah, I was able to get
It went a little further into
yeah,
today.
I was able to get a tuxedo that one of the characters require. We needed also a wheelchair.
Oh, yeah, that's
We were
always a
able
big
to
one,
rent
yeah.
it,
Right, sure.
which we never took it back.
Oh, dear.
Those people were after Miguel Garin and the Nuyorican Poets Cafe forever.
They wanted that wheelchair back. They're
Pedro took it
expensive.
to his house. He loved it. He loved it. So he took the.
Took it home.
took it. But
You promised that you might read what.
yeah, in fact,
Oh, good
I
idea.
would like to start with the Puerto Rican
Yes,
obituary.
yes.
This book it hit a nerve in the early 70s. It was published in 1973 by Evergreen Monthly Review Press. Monthly Review Press. They are on 14th
So this
Street.
is an important turning point.
Very much so, because Puerto Ricans in Boston, Puerto Ricans in Texas, kind of read it and say, wow.
Wow.
Wow. Probably the young Puerto Ricans of today are not, too keen to it, or it doesn't cause, the impression it then did. But let me read
great.
a sample of.
Back in the day.
The dedication is beautiful to the memory, of his mother. Para la memoria de mi querida madre, Petra Pietri.
Oh, nice.
Pedro
And
Petra.
Petra.
Yes, I love the name
That's
Petra.
great. I do too.
Okay. They worked. They were always on time. They were never late. They never spoke back when they were insulted. They worked. They never took days off. That were not on the calendar. They never went on strike without permission. They worked 10 days a week and were only paid for 5. They worked, they worked, they worked, and they died. They died broke. They died owing. They died never knowing what the front entrance of the First National City Bank looks like. Juan, Miguel, Milagros, Olga, Manuel, all died yesterday, today, and will die again tomorrow, passing their bill collectors on to the next of kin. All died waiting for the Garden of Eden to open up again under a new management. All died dreaming about America, waking them up in the middle of the night, screaming, "Mira, mira, your name is on the winning lottery ticket for $100,000. All died hating the grocery stores that sold them make-believe steak and bulletproof rice and beans. All died waiting, dreaming, and hating." It is...
And this, at the time, to put it in context, put it on the timeline, when people heard this, this was the first time they heard a voice speaking out how they were feeling.
Exactly.
Representing the community.
Exactly.
And so it hit a nerve throughout, and it was one of the unifying forces of the Puerto Rican people.
It also strikes me as the kind of thing that no one dared say before, that it has that aspect to it, that it's not just bringing up something that a lot of people are feeling, but it's also breaking that barrier of speaking it.
Yes. Well, the young lords were already doing the political, push through demonstrations, although later on we had the violence, the bombs, by the FALN.
Right, that was a different sort of
that was a different sort. It's like the hippies and the Weather Underground.
Right.
Gotta
contrast
stop.
there.
The contrast
right.
when you try to do it with nonviolent means
Exactly.
and all of that. And I mean, as I said, he's the poet laureate of the Young Lords, and
was he a great reader? Like when he read his poetry, did he?
Oh, he was fantastic. I mean, I'm reading as without any theatricality. He had a stage presence, very, very strong, and his reading was really. I mean, he got the people really going. He was also a stand-up comedian. You have to think
so
about that.
Clever.
Yeah.
But I went with him. I don't remember if it was at the Catch a Rising Star or one of those
the
comedy
Improv
clubs, the
right.
Improv. Yes, and he bombed. He bombed totally because. And my what I think of is that he was not. Even those comedians that say "fuck" every 3 words and sound raunchy and all that.
Right.
To me, they were mainstream.
Yes.
At the time, they were totally mainstream. They were not like the original,
Right, like
the stand-up comedian.
like what's his name? Like our buddy from the cafe. Why can't I think of his name?
My God.
I don't know who you're talking
It's
about.
terrible. I was in San Francisco at the Swiss American Hotel for 2 weeks in the room he jumped from.
God. I don't know.
Who you're talking about.
He's mayor. Okay, anyway.
We'll
Come back to it.
Senior moment.
Well, anyway, his stand-up act was like this. He would come with a huge suitcase, and he said in letters, "Rent a coffin." He would open the suitcase, and it was full of props and a bottle of rum. Dark rum, and he would start drinking. The idea of the act was to be drunk at the end. All right,
Okay.
and all his jokes were about death. So that didn't.
They didn't like
They
it.
didn't like it. Nobody.
That's what they came for.
I mean,
It was a little heavy there, a little political.
Yeah, but in those days you could get Mayor Koch, and make fun of him,
Right.
and that's what those guys. The president, I think it was Carter. I'm not
Right.
sure, or.
Well, Juan, we have a couple more minutes, so anything you want to add, or
Let's have
sum
another.
up
Let's
the,
read
wanna
something
read
else.
something?
You want me to? Okay. In 1986, he came with this beautiful woman to my apartment on East 10th Street, and he wrote this book in Spanish. The only thing that he wrote in Spanish called Amor de mi muerte, which is my love after death. And they decided that they would get married at the cemetery, and they would be married, they would be husband and wife after death, regardless of the present.
During the lifetime.
Well, he had a wife and she had a husband.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, that's what they did. So I'll read, and this is in Spanish.
That's
so
fine, yeah.
excuse me. Okay. Yo lo juro por tu madre, porque Dios no merece ese honor, que aunque no me ames para siempre, voy a llorar cuando te mueras, desnudarme en la funeraria, brincar dentro del ataúd, besarte la boca y chupar la nieve de tus senos con pasión sagrada y decadente. No me importa lo que digan las gentes cuando yo entre dentro de tu cuerpo de luz apagada, para que al fin de esta boda negra tú tengas juventud eterna, más allá en el olvido. Te pido que me perdones. This is about necrophilia. This definitely is about necrophilia.
Wow.
And Pedro had this fascination with death. When we were walking, even if we were drunk in the streets of Manhattan, if a funeral home appeared, he would walk across the street.
Oh, to the other side?
To the other
The
side.
other side.
Yes. He would never walk right across the
threshold.
Which,
the
you know,
threshold.
that seems so different than, being from Mexico, where the family goes to celebrate
Yes.
on the stones of their family and has a picnic and a party and gets drunk. And
To me, in my culture, death is a joke. Almost. I feed death. I try
right.
to.
It's part of it's going back to the pyramids. There's
Yes.
skulls all over them. And everything.
Right. But the Latin Insomniacs. There is some things to say about them, of what we did in the late 70s, little 80s, and now without controversy, Pedro and I didn't speak to each other for about 7 or 8 years.
So there was some
We only have
internal
30 seconds
conflict.
to tell this part of the story.
Well, let me put it in one word, 2 words.
Okay.
A woman.
That sums it up.
Who became my third wife and the mother of my children, and finally we made up and we said how stupid we were,
Yeah,
know.
you never
Juan
realized.
Valenzuela, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank
on Let's
you.
Talk. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Yes,
Johnny,
it was
thank you
wonderful
very
to
much.
have you.
Yes.
All right.
Pedro Pietri, thank you
All
very
right.
much, and we'll see you next week.